Hello Beer Geeks, welcome to a, well, it would be a seasonal episode if we'd actually recorded it in Bock season. We're just at the tail end of Bock season.
So, you know, greatness takes time, Johnny.
Is that what this video is going to be? Well, we'll find out as we dive into what even is Bock.
So, Johnny, what even is Bock?
Oh my god, I didn't expect that question. Well, it's a little bit hard to say, if I'm honest, viewers. It's one of those beer styles that has lots of different stories around it. We're talking about stories that were told back as far as like the 1400s. So we're in the dark ages, you know, not a lot was written down.
Wow.
And if they were drinking Bocks, they probably weren't being particularly coherent anyway. So yeah, the story goes that the Bock, the origins of Bock is in a town called Einbeck, which is in Saxony near Hanover, northern Germany.
Yes.
And there must have been some really dark, strong, tasty brown beers, as they were called. Like pretty much all beers were brown in colour. Yes. But now we call them brown beers because they were big, strong, brown German beers. And somebody, I guess, really enjoyed these Einbeck brown beers. And suddenly we see them crop up about 200 years later down in Bavaria and Munich.
Right.
Which is where the real history of Bock beer starts. And supposedly Bock is the Bavarian accent on Einbeck. So they'd have called it Einbock.
Oh, okay. So it comes from like a regional name that kind of got mutated along the way and became something else.
Bit of Chinese, German whispers.
Got you.
German whispers.
Nice.
And so the one that's credited as the first sort of Bock, or technically it was a Doppelbock, these big, strong, dark beers, was brewed by Paulaner. It's called Salvatore, nice. And it's a Doppelbock. It's set over 7%, big, dark, strong lager, because down there in Bavaria, the natural yeasts were lager yeasts and preferred to be lagered for a good long time to get the flavours right.
Okay, so fundamentally it's a lager.
Yeah, which has different kind of flavour profiles. It takes longer to ferment because it's at colder temperatures, so it's going to be smoother than perhaps the slightly gnarly Einbeck beers might have been. Now, we know that Paulaner brewed the first one because there's actually a document from the local towns, from the other monasteries. So this was brewed on the Nockeberg. They call it a Nockeberg mountain, definitely a hill, where there was a monastery there, the Paulaner monks, brewing this beer. And there's a document that says, like, the beer being brewed by the Paulaner monks is too good, it's putting us out of business, we need to put some kind of limits on it. And that's how we know that the Paulaner monastery exists. And they were brewing this big, nearly 8% dark lager. And that's what we're going to taste first. So we haven't got the Salvatore. Obviously there are loads of these traditional Bocks now. There's Salvatore, there's Animator, there's Celebrator, which is Eyinger. So they all have this Tor at the end. This one is just called Doppelbock. But it's from
simple.
Utopian, who make delicious, delicious lagers here in the UK, all with British ingredients. So a little twist on this.
Great stuff.
So we're going to get an idea of potentially what this style kind of means, and then we'll get into where the style has gone since, because it's gone places, for sure.
So this is a Doppelbock.
A Doppelbock, exactly. Doppel means double.
Right.
So it's not quite double a normal Bock, and obviously it wouldn't have been double anything because there wasn't other Bocks at the time. So it's a name we've given it since.
Strong.
Yeah, just really strong. And there's an amazing, it's called Stark Beer Fest. It's like the winter version of Oktoberfest, where you drink this by the stein. And I have video evidence of that. We do have a video about it. Caramel.
Yeah.
Floral. Biscuity. Really sweet, raisiny.
Sweet. Really sweet.
Yeah. So these beers are really sweet, but also really well hopped, because these beers were brewed particularly in spring, which we'll get onto. And then they were lagered throughout the summer in the caves, kept cold in the caves of the foothills of the Alps over the summer, because you couldn't brew in summer in Munich. It was too hot, your beer was very likely to get infected. Right. So these beers were lagered for a long time, so they had to be well hopped, they also had to be strong, and they were also very sweet.
So it came out of a sort of geographical necessity. Exactly.
Like most beer styles that were formed before the 1850s were making the best of the situation, essentially. Raisins, milk chocolate, a little bit nutty. A little bit pistachio-y, cashew-y, something around there. And generally, they'd have a big hop finish, not modern-wise. Like the Paulaner one is surprisingly hoppy because you need that crispness at the finish.
Crisp and sweet is a good combo for me. I'm really enjoying it.
really helps the beer go down.
Big
yeah.
time.
So we've already talked about the fact that these were long lagered, so they're well hopped to last that process without getting infected. The other thing to note is that decoction or long boiling, or potentially both, are big parts of this. So we picked up lots of fruitiness in that beer. Part of that was alcohol, but part of it was malt. There's no real yeast character because it's a lager. Right. Now the other thing you can get fruity character from is decoction, which is this process of boiling a portion of the wort. Or you can do a really long boil, which is another way. You literally caramelise the sugars in the boil and you get darker colours, sticky caramel, fruitiness. And that is what's going to happen here. So even though we've got a much smaller beer, there's still going to be, I think, all of that sweetness because you can't ferment caramelised sugar, all of that lovely fruitiness, but a little bit more sessionable. So that smells like figs to me.
Yeah,
all fig.
It's kind of rich. It's not quite as sweet to me, but it's...
So we've taken away that alcohol sweetness.
Yeah, it's the alcohol sweetness,
and dried it out a little bit.
Caramel, it's got like caramel kind of notes going on.
Yeah, definitely. Loads of caramel.
Very dialed in.
Yep.
Smooth. It's a sessionable beer, isn't it?
Exactly. And you know what I love about these boxes, you've got a really dark colour there, but the actual malts that are going in are not often that dark. You know, kind of this. Yeah. It's probably 100% Munich or close to that, which isn't the darkest malt, but because of those long boils and those decoctions, you're going to get a lot more colour. There's
a satisfying maltiness to this beer.
Yeah. Really, it is a really malt forward beer. There's not a lot of hop character, even though there's bitterness. There's not a lot of yeast character because it's a lager, and the water is, you know, beautifully soft to let that malt really shine. So it's just, you know, if you want to understand what those kind of mid-range malts, those caramel malts taste like, or what decoction and long boiling can do to a beer, Bock is the one. Now, before we move on, we should talk about when these beers were typically brewed. So as I said, they survived over the summer. They were brewed there because you couldn't brew over the summer. So that meant lots of them were brewed sort of between January and April, I believe. From there's a certain saint, probably wasn't George, but after that day, maybe it was after Easter, you couldn't brew anymore legally in Bavaria.
Right.
So all these beers were brewed pretty much in spring or very late winter. So this is where another kind of story about the Bock might come from, because Capricorn falls within there, which is a goat. Goats, lambs, all signs of spring. Bock is German for a goat. And then there's another one, which almost certainly isn't true, but they say that these strong, very sessionable beers kick like a goat. And I think probably that came after the Bock name rather than... Because if you were going to say something kicked you, you probably wouldn't go with a goat. It would probably be called like donkey beer.
I have been kicked by a goat as a child.
And how did that go down?
Headbutted, actually. Sorry, headbutted.
Oh, okay.
It knocked me on my feet. Off my feet, even.
How old were you?
5, probably.
Right, okay. That makes some sense. Yeah. Is this recreating that
I think
emotion?
I'd need to drink a few more of these Bocks.
Right, and then it'd be like being headbutted.
Possibly.
So with these two, they were brewed strong to last over the summer, but obviously not all of the Bocks that were brewed were going to be drunk in 4, 5, 6 months' time. Some of them were brewed to drink now.
Germans love to drink. Let's
exactly.
Get that right. So they need something now as well as
it's all
something...
good. We've got them in the tank.
Yeah.
Where's the beer for now? And that was the Bock. So in the mid sort of 1800s, a little bit later, we'd learned to make much paler beer, and much paler beer was becoming much more popular. And the Bock was invented around this time to celebrate spring and to celebrate beer garden season starting. So it's kind of the official beer of the start of the beer garden. So you go to your first beer garden visit and they'd have a Bock on tap to celebrate. So they were combining these paler malts and going, hey, it's spring, it's summer, we want something paler, lighter, crisper. So what you've got is the same decoction, long boil kind of character, but they're using much lighter malts to get much lighter, crisper character.
Amazing. This is oldie-timey summertime beer garden crispy boy territory. I love it. Wow, look at the colour difference already, Johnny.
Yeah, exactly. So similar philosophy, different malts, essentially.
Yeah. So
And these were designed to be drunk fresh.
Yeah, I was going to say, to talk about longevity and all the rest of it, this looks quite different.
Yeah.
And it's to be drunk a lot younger.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to sort of sustain throughout the summer.
No, this is a lot of spring beer. So spring beer isn't really a style like Christmas beer is almost a style. Those sort of dark quads with different spices. Spring beer is not quite as well defined. Spring beer is essentially beer that you drink now.
Yes.
So it's fresh beer that you drink to celebrate the fact that it's getting nice outside. And that is very much in here. But still, we're still at 6.2, you know, so everything else is the same. We've just changed the malt bill.
Jeez.
And we're getting some people headbutted by some goats in the morning.
Loving that, mate. All I can say. Great.
So it's still got the sweetness, but it feels less full-bodied, less unctuous, less treacly. Feels a bit more honey sweet, biscuity, and incredibly sessionable. I mean, it feels like a Hellas, right?
Oh, big time. I mean, this is ticking all of the boxes for me.
Yeah,
in terms of like a summery sort of Hellas style lager that I'd like to drink.
I'm super impressed with this one. So, there we go. So this is brewed by Left-Handed Giant and their brew pub in Bristol, which is awesome if you haven't been. But it's also in collaboration with New Barns, who make fantastic lager. And in fact, all of their malt forward styles are just unreal.
Heavy hitters.
And this is hopped with Spalter Select Solero and Styrian Dragon. So there should be, what have they put? Tangerine and a herbal bouquet. So there should be some fruitiness from the Solero.
I'm getting the herbal thing for sure.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fresh sort of spring hedgerowy herbal kind of.
Really, it's like a hedgerow after rain. Yeah. That's too much. So my box is not the most kind of generic name. It's not going to help people necessarily understand what's in it. So sometimes they're referred to as Hellas Box.
Great.
These lighter ones. So they're literally stronger versions of Hellas. And that's what we're going to drink now. Now, these are essentially the same style. You know, you could call this a Maibock very, very happily. They've taken the seasonality away from it. They've gone, it doesn't have to be in May.
Yeah.
Got German there. You can have a Hellas Bock and it's a delicious beer at any time of year.
Yes.
Really. So it's just saying a Hellas Bock.
It's shorthand.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
And the smell is very similar.
Very similar.
I'd say that there aren't any modern hops in that. I think this is probably straight down the line, especially knowing duration. And this is made with Donzoco as well, so another great, now Scottish-based malt-forward brewery. So people know where to go, and apparently it's Scotland if you want a bit of lager expertise in your brewing. But yeah, so this just takes the seasonality away and says, you know, it's a pale, strong, slightly sweet, but very, very drinkable beer. And is there a time of the year when that's not great?
Why limit yourself to the summertime?
Exactly.
I'll drink
Here's
to that.
the Hellas Bock, yeah. Now, everything Duration make is pretty much bone dry. They love dry beer.
Yeah.
So it hasn't got that kind of sweetness that you'd expect from that we've been getting from the other ones. But it has got that really fresh, herbal, hedgerowy aroma. It's strong, pale, biscuity, no sort of decoction character. So if anything, they've made it more drinkable for other times of the year. You know, that could be drunk in the height of summer and get you in real trouble.
Is that also strong? I think that's fantastic beer.
6.2, 6.2, 6, 7.5.
My word.
But all of those beers you'd think were sub 5. You know, that's
These are
the
dangerous.
drinkability of these things. And that's, you know, something that Bock really brings and why what happened in Munich that night happened. So I hope that's... Brad's still drinking. So I hope that's been helpful in working out what a Bock is. The history of it is confused. I'm confused. A little bit drunk. But there are other kinds of Bock. You've got the Weizenbock, which is a wheat beer version. In fact, one of our very earliest videos, I got confused and called a Weizenbock a lager. Don't do that. The Germans didn't enjoy that. But we live, we learn.
Oh, yeah.
We drink Bock. And then there's the Eisbock.
Yes.
Which is an ice-distilled Weizenbock.
Just to get it even stronger, Johnny.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So there's anywhere you can take a Bock, but essentially, you know, if you had to write down what a Bock is, it's a strong, malty, caramelly, either from decoction, long boil, or malts, but incredibly drinkable beer that is best enjoyed either at the start or the finish of summer.
Or any other time of the year.
Or any other time of the year if you just take the word Mai out. Yeah.